All right, Arnaud, this is always one of my favorite questions, and I generally start it by saying influencers, sometimes they come in a moment, right time, right place, sometimes in a lifetime in between. One of my first major influences was my grandfather. He was from Kyiv, as was my grandmother. My mom went and had an accent, and we grew up in Montreal. When I was about 5 or 6, he would take me on walks in the park. And I saw he talked to everybody, and which is probably where I get it. And one day I asked him, I called him Zeta, I said, Zeta, how do you know all these people? And he looked at me with his accent and said, one day I just smiled at one, and then he smiled back at me, and then he started talking to me. And then someone else came by and smiled and talked also. So we smiled back at that guy, and so on and so forth. And I got it as a 5-year-old, but then I got it more and more every year as I was going through life. Can you share with us, I know there's probably a lot, 2 or 3 people that have been influencers in your life?
For sure. I mean, I would take a counter example. My parents, for instance, were big influencers in my life of not to do what I needed to do. So, I mean, but we have to celebrate them, or I do celebrate them for what they showed me in any case, and I'm very grateful for that. Besides that, I have had many influencers that came along. They come into your life, they show you a path, and then poof, they go. And I have been blessed with many different type of people, and I wouldn't be able to know where to start, and you wouldn't know them anyway. They are part of the little story, I guess. If we want to relate to people that have more clout and more name, I would say that people like Ramana Maharshi, a wise man from the early 1900s, was an amazing influencer for me. He wrote a treatise called Who Am I, which was quite definitive for me, for my work as well, and guided me on my path further. There were people like Alan Watts, who is very known from California as well, that was very useful. And then I think I have to name life, because it's very important. But every moment, at least in my life, and the people that are working with me find out the same, every moment in my life brings me to a place closer to myself. And so every issue, every obstacle, every conversation is just a way for me to have been a bit better. And so the best example I can give and share with you, the best influencer there is for me, is life, is the flow of life. And so, yeah. And therefore my heart, because, that's the dialogue with my heart.
It's all connected. And, it makes me think also, as we conclude here, is that we always have to realize that we're also knowingly or not influencing people all the time.
Yeah.
And we have the choice to do it positively or not as well, and make a difference. So you certainly do that for me. You get inspired every time. So I appreciate that. And thanks for sharing all that. That's great.
Thank you.